Begin with just a couple of housekeeping issues, if I may. Okay, so the first point is that this webinar is being recorded, and all of you will receive the recording to the webinar in case you want to catch up on it again. Okay, and you will also receive a certificate for your participation in this webinar, and both of those things will you'll receive them within a couple of weeks. Okay, probably sooner. Good. I'll introduce myself first of all. All right. So my name is Michael Brand, and I'm from England originally. I'm from the south of England, from a place called Aylesbury. That's where I was brought up. I went to university and I started my teaching career in the north of England in a place called Durham. So I learned French and German at university, and I began teaching in secondary schools in Durham, teaching French and German to my students. About 11 years ago now, I moved to Spain, and half of those I've lived in Madrid, and the other half I've lived north of Madrid in a place called Miraflores de la Sierra, which means look flowers of the mountain. And my time in Spain, I've been teaching for about half of that in some secondary and some primary, mainly English with a bit of French. And the second half of my time in Spain, I've been working as a teacher trainer for Pearson. Okay, so I give teacher training talks. But I also deliver classes. I deliver online classes as part of the live classes project. Okay, so this is a project where we do online lessons to up to 10 schools from around the world, all at the same time. Okay, so we're practicing our English together. English is kind of the lingua franca of the class. So the students have a reason to use it. They're motivated to use it, and the students can also learn something about the countries and the cultures of the other classes in there as well. Okay. So it's because of my experience teaching live classes online that I'm doing a webinar on teaching English online to teens. Okay, because that's what live classes is. Okay, good. So I'm not going to spend the whole webinar talking about the current situation, though I do touch on it because, let's be honest, it's the reason why most of us are here. So I'm aware that we'll have teachers from different contexts, teachers from state schools, teachers from private language schools, and many teachers are being asked to continue the curriculum. And it's difficult to do this just by sending students a page number and some exercises to do. They do still need direct instructions, direct instruction, I should say. Teachers are still very important. So we're looking today at actually teaching lessons online, okay? One thing I'll say is that it does take a little bit of time and effort to set up, but you can learn the ropes fairly quickly. And if the students see that they're getting the chance to participate in a quality lesson and do some real learning, it's much more attractive for them than trying to attempt a list of exercises, and they're much more likely to do it and get something out of it. And finally, and I do want to keep the glass half full rather than half empty, if we do learn all these skills in this current predicament we find ourselves in, they're also going to be useful once this situation is over as well. Okay, good. So let's begin. Let's get started. Okay, so teaching English remotely is going to require a platform, assuming you want to teach in real time. So for your students to see you and to hear you, and for you to see and hear your students. You need to set up an account on a platform. There are a few out there, and they've seen a surge in popularity and in their share price recently because of the coronavirus crisis. Some of them have been a bit slower, but they've sped up in the last few days. Okay, and so far the technology here is fine, and we've got 1,000 people. No, I tell a lie, not quite as many, bordering on 600 people in this webinar. Okay. Once you have an account on a platform, you set up a meeting, which gives you a link, which you then send to your students, and they click on the link to join. This is what you've all done for today. of course. Okay. An exception to this is the 8x8 platform, which doesn't require an account. You just click on the page and start a session immediately. Okay. The platform we're using today is a bit different to one that you would use in an online lesson. Okay, in the sense that this is a webinar tool for up to 1,000 people. So you can see me and you can hear me. Although one or two of you are saying that you can't hear me very well, I'm afraid it may be that you have an issue at your end. The internet is a bit saturated at the moment. So as I was saying, this tool then you can see and hear me, but I can't see and hear you. There are some similarities though between this webinar tool and the type of tool you use for online classes, in the sense that I can share a presentation, I can share my screen, and you can type things in the chat box, which allows for interaction. This tool also has a whiteboard, which tools like Zoom also have. Okay. So again, I've put some examples of the type of platforms on the screen. I've used Hangouts and I've used Skype, very simple, along with 8x8. Other tools like Zoom, which I use for my live classes, has more functions, such as the possibility of putting students in breakout rooms, different virtual rooms, so they can go away and work in pairs or small groups, and then come back to the main room and tell everybody what they've done. You can also pop in and out of the rooms to monitor. Webroom is another good platform, although the free version only allows for 8 people. The free version of Zoom lets you have up to 100 people, which is probably more than enough. But the lessons are capped at 40 minutes. So if you want to do the longer lesson, you'd have to start another one, which again is not the end of the world. If you want the full functionality, then there's a price to pay. In Zoom as well, it's easy to share your computer's audio, which is useful if you're playing a listening track or a video. And in Hangouts and Skype, it's more of a technical challenge to share your computer's audio, but it can be done. I can see people are suggesting other tools in here as well, like Teams, Microsoft Teams. Great. So in terms of hardware, our students ideally will have a computer with a webcam and a microphone. Laptops have these built in. Most students will have the headphones that come with a mobile phone, and these also have a microphone in. So these are handy. Of course, we don't live in an ideal world. And some students maybe don't have a computer at home. In Spain, the situation is students do generally have the internet at home. So if they don't have a computer, another option is to connect with a mobile phone. It's not as easy. You do lose some functionality, but you can connect to one of these classes with a mobile phone. Okay. Okay. Good. So I want to share some general thoughts and principles for teaching online. I'm just going to give you a second just to read what's on the slide before I talk about it. Okay. Okay. Need to get my left and right looking in a mirror. Good. So all of these points I've put on this slide are relevant to teaching teens in general, right? But I think they're even more relevant to teaching online because they're further away from you. So you have to make more of an effort to connect with them and bring them closer. So we need to make use of facial expressions. Okay, we can communicate with different facial expressions. We can use our hands, as I'm doing now, to emphasize, to agree, to disagree, to order our points. Eye contact's important. I'm trying to look at the camera so that you can see me rather than looking down. I'm trying to move around a little bit. So all these things as well, I'm trying to engage you that help you understand me. And we can also talk about pronunciation. So if I was trying to show you a shape with my mouth, it'd be important for me to be close to the camera. Again, next point, this idea of some energy, some encouraging your students, praising them. general pointers for teaching, but I would say more important online as well. When I'm doing my live classes, I try to be really quite liberal with my praise and geeing them all up, because sometimes it can be nerve-wracking, talking in a sort of an online class when you've never done it before. Patience is important again in teaching. So if I ask a student a question, then it's good to give them some time to think and respond, rather than just giving them a second and say, well, never mind, we'll try somebody else. Yeah. And even more so in a live class or in an online class, giving them some time, because there's a bit of a delay. I always find it's seen in my classes, it's worth it. Give them some time to respond. And then the next thing I would say is, so if I give students instructions in class, I want to know that they've understood me. And I don't, one of the kind of the golden rules of teaching, isn't it, is that you don't say, well, do you understand? Sort of nod or keep stum. You want to check they understand. So can you tell me what you have to do? Yeah. So they repeat the instructions back to you. Online, it's harder to monitor understanding. So you can nominate a student to tell you what you've asked them to do, or you can get them to type in the chat box your instructions. Okay. So those are just some general principles. I want to actually have a quick look in the platform. Okay. I've just taken a few screenshots. So I hadn't taken many screenshots of my live classes from inside the platform. I didn't really have a need to. So I did a quick Zoom with my family a couple of days ago, just to catch up with them as well. And I took advantage by taking a few screenshots. So we can see each other's cameras, as you can see. If we share if the organizer shares their screen, then the pictures and the icons of the people are much smaller. So if we don't need to be sharing a presentation or screen, it's best not to, and so we can see everybody better. Of course, if you've got 20 people in there, they're smaller. Yeah. We can share our screen. I'm sharing a presentation now. Later I'll be sharing my screen. So we might have a PowerPoint presentation or a Google Doc or the presentation tool that comes with our course book. We'll look at examples of this later. Zoom and other tools, and indeed this tool, have a whiteboard. And if you don't have a whiteboard integrated in your tool, there are some online whiteboards as well, which you can use. I've highlighted at the bottom here, share computer sound. And this is important because if you play an audio or a video in your machine, then the sound gets to the computers of the people who are in your lesson. So that's why it's important to share your computer sound. Okay. Good. So these are just two other tools online for whiteboards. If you want a whiteboard and your platform doesn't have one, something like Hangouts, you can use a whiteboard for the things you normally do in class, like writing up new vocabulary, correcting mistakes, gapping sentences. But again, you can also use things like Google Docs for this, which we'll look at. Other key features of platforms I want to look at now. So if we organize a meeting, we're able to mute and unmute our participants. So this is useful for classroom management. One of the reasons it's handy for students to be wearing a headset like this is that they don't pick up like the dog barking or the little brother in the house or what have you. But in any case, we can just mute our participants. And if we're worried about them interrupting, we can remove the right for them to unmute themselves, which is what I've kind of highlighted in the middle here. But hopefully we can kind of reach an agreement on etiquette. Okay. So all of these webinar tools have chat boxes, like today. And I've just got some things you can do with the chat box. I'm just going to let you read through them before I talk about them. Okay, so the chat box. Chat box is good for brainstorming. So I say, what ideas do you have on this topic, or what words do you already know on this topic? And they can be typing in what they know, what they think. If I ask a question, I can nominate a student to tell me the answer, or I can ask them to put their answers in the chat box. As we've already said, if I give you instructions, I can check that you've understood me by having you write them in the chat box. I can say the instructions and I can type them in the chat box just for clarity. Perhaps you're speaking and I notice a mistake. It's a good way to kind of give delayed feedback in the sense that I'm not going to say, stop, mistake. I can just type the mistake in the chat box and see if anyone can correct it. I can paste links in the chat box. If I want you to be going to a different website in the lesson, I put the link in the chat box and you click on it. These chat box, many of them can be downloaded depending on the tool, or you can just highlight them. So you can provide everything that was said in the chat box to the students after the lesson. So they have like, a record of the lesson. Of course, in some tools, you can actually record the lesson and provide the recording. The teacher then, so I can be sending messages now to all of you in the chat box. And I can also send messages to individuals. So if I want to give an individual some feedback, I can select them, select that participant, and send them a message. And the other thing to say about the chat box is that everybody can talk at the same time, which is normally one of the things we don't want as a teacher, right? Everybody talking at the same time. But in this scenario, in this kind of context, it's fine. There can be ideas flying in the chat box, generating lots of language, and that's great. Okay. Okay, moving on. Breakout rooms. So this is a feature I use a lot. Again, I'll just let you have a look at the screen and just quickly read the text before I talk about it. So breakout rooms, then you assign students into different virtual rooms. So as I mentioned, when I teach live classes, I teach schools from different countries, and we use breakout rooms to get them to ask another school questions about their school and their country. And then when we come back together to the main room, we say what we've learned. So I say, right, so Ukraine, who did you talk to and what did you learn? And Ukraine say, well, we spoke to Turkey and we learned this. Yeah. So they're basically a way of building in pair work or group work into online classes. What sort of activities would you do? Well, the sorts you would normally do in class, I would say. So you can have them in pairs, doing role plays, asking each other questions. If you're getting them asking questions, you'll want a task for them to make sure that they do it and that they listen. So maybe they have to report what the other person said, or they have to assess their partner. It doesn't have to be pair work, of course. It could be in small groups. Have them doing a group discussion, maybe a ranking task. And you can have a referee in the room who is monitoring the use of key language that you've fed in earlier in the lesson, for example. And the teachers can go in and out of the breakout rooms as well, to monitor. So I sort of, in my live classes, I'll go into all of the rooms and have a little listen, as you can see in the picture here, to what's going on. And I say, right, so I heard an interesting discussion between Poland and Mexico. What did you learn about one another? Mexico, what did so I pop in and out. Okay. Good. So not all online tools have breakout rooms. So if you don't have breakout rooms on the tool that you're using, then the students won't be able to speak quite as much, but they can still speak, of course. So you can still get them doing pair work and group work, but all of the rest of the students in the class have got a task to do. Again, like we said, some kind of noticing language task, assessing, agreeing or disagreeing with what's being said. And they can put all of that in the chat box. So they can still be participating, even if they're not speaking at that time. You can also get students to decide who they want to ask a question to. So I ask a question to a student in my class, and then they decide who they want to talk to next. So it's not just the teacher, leading absolutely everything. And of course, number 4, then you can get them to practice outside of your lessons. So some tasks are more effective than others, obviously, here. So if we say, right, the homework is just to practice those questions we looked at with a partner, is there a strong reason for doing it? If the homework were, be preparing a dialogue on what we've looked at, and the next lesson you're going to perform it, well, they're more likely to have practiced outside of class. So, if you are using tools like Skype and Hangouts, they can actually connect one another with those tools. You don't have to be there. If you've set them a strong task to do, and they're going to actually have to show that they've done it in the next lesson. There are also lots of tools online for them to get speaking. Flipgrid is one where you can upload videos to and discuss and comment on the videos, kind of a closed space. Other tools, Voki is a tool where you can record yourself with an avatar. VoiceThread is a tool where you can record yourself over slides. Vocaroo is just a tool where you can just record your voice. And all of these tools, then, you've got the students recording themselves, but it's good to have a place to put that. So a Padlet is a space, an online space. We're going to look at Padlet later in the session, where they can post their work, post their avatar talking, post their slide share presentation, post their simple recording. And then it's not enough for the teacher just to say, well, look at what the other students have done. We're going to need a task. These are free tools, somebody's asked. So a task would be, which was your favorite, which was the most original, which did you disagree with, right? 5 things you learned, 5 words that you learned, to actually get them engaging with one another's work. Okay, so you can have them talking outside of class as well, even more relevant in this situation. Okay. So when I teach, so this is just when I teach my live classes. This is I just took a photo of the kind of notes I have. So at the start of the lesson, I write down all of the different schools. And, I like to keep track of who's interacting, and I like to give everybody a turn. So sometimes when I ask a question, I get them, I look at their webcams and see who's got their hand up. Sometimes I nominate somebody to answer, but I try to keep things more or less even. So hence this little chart of ticking off schools when they participate. The different letters show different tasks that I've assigned to different schools, and they feed back with the answers for others who didn't do their task. Again, we're going to do an example of that soon. So you might think, well, why didn't I let the school from China participate? So this school couldn't be here because it was a few weeks ago when just the schools in China were closed. But thankfully, the teacher attended this class, and he somehow beamed my lesson to all of his students at individual computers so they could actually follow the lesson, if not participate. Now, the lines on the left here are matching up schools for breakout rooms. So during the lesson, I gauge the students' ages and their levels and try to match them up. Of course, you'll know something about your students' level, so you can decide this, before. You don't have to decide it on the fly. Other interaction possibilities that I use in my classes, I get them putting their thumbs up if they agree, or their thumbs down if they disagree, or to nod or to shake their heads, get them to stand up and sit down. So these are all other ways of getting them interacting, moving around, using their bodies. Okay. Good. So if we assume then that you're going to continue your curriculum and using your course book that you normally use, you might want to share your course book. So a good course book will have some software to project it in class on a projector or an interactive whiteboard. So I'd say if you use a course book and you don't have this software, then contact your publisher to see if it exists and to see if you can get it. Okay. So we can use the screen share function of the platform to share the book with our students in the class. in the online class. And if they've got a paper-based course book in front of them, that's great too. So I'm gonna do that now just to kind of demonstrate that with you. So I'm going to share my screen, if you will just bear with me. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. I'm going to go into what's called the Active Teach. So this is the software to project your book. Going to go into a page. Okay, here we go. It's probably a bit small for you at the moment. You probably can't read the text, but these tools tend to have a zoom function. So I'll zoom in on part of the page. What's this about? So it says here, we're looking at number 1. Do you take photos with your mobile phone? What do you take photos of? So again, I might nominate a student to say something here. I might get you to come up with ideas in the chat box. What do you take photos of with your mobile phone? So I'm going to ask you to do that. Yeah, if you put in the chat box any ideas you've got, what you take photos of with a mobile phone. Yeah, we've got people saying they take photos of their dog, cat, family, empty streets. Yeah, and there's nothing on the screen now because I'm back in the tool. Okay, good. Lots of ideas coming in. I'm just going to go back to the tool here, to the whiteboard tool. It's because there are 600, 700 people in here. It goes a bit more slowly. It'll be quicker for you in a lesson with 20 people. Yeah. Okay, fine. I might go to a text. I'm going to zoom in on a text. Okay. And I might be nominating students to speak one at a time, to read a sentence from the text and try and choose the right word. Okay. I'm going to zoom out. This actually has activities on it, so you can do the activities in an interactive way. Yeah, so what do you have to do here? You have to drag words to the correct columns. So the first column says amazing, awesome, brilliant. You have to drag a couple of words in which mean the same thing. So I'd nominate a student to tell me, or to get them to put it in the chat box, and then I'd have a go. Let's have a look. And now we can see the answers. Okay, I only got one. Did I get them both right? I think I got them both right. Okay, there you go. Fine. I'm not going to show you lots of activities from the course, but the point I'm making then is that you can, and I'm just going to get my presentation back up. You can share your whiteboard software through this tool to kind of progress through the lesson. Okay? Okay, good. Right. We're going to do an activity. We're going to do an activity now. So you're going to watch a video in a second, a video about a school called Byron Court School. And I'm going to give you a task to do. But you're going to be doing different tasks. So if you look at the slide, the task you have to do depends on the first letter of your name. So what's your name? Does it begin with an A, B, or C? Well, then you're doing the first task. Does it begin D, E, or F? You're doing the second task, and so forth. So I'm going to ask you now to note down your task. Yeah, or write down the task you have to do, only one. I'm going to put it in the chat box. I'm going to put the task in the chat box, the tasks, in case that's also useful to you. You could also take like a screenshot of the tasks if you like, because in a minute I'm going to show you video. So there you are. I've put the tasks in the chat box. You can copy that if you like. Okay. So you've got your task. Good. We're going to, and excellent. Everybody's confirming their task as well. Lovely. So I think we know what our task is. So I'm gonna play the video now, and you can do your task while you're watching. Don't write your answers in the chat box for now, please. Don't answer your questions in the chat box. Just do it for yourself for now, please. Okay. Here we go.
Many schools have students of different nationalities. In the playground at one school in London, you can hear not 5 languages, not 15, not 30, but 42. Byron Court is a primary school with 600 children from 5 to 11 years old.
Bună, eu sunt Adelin.
Meu nome é Dia.
Selam, ani ismi Fat.
Meu nome é Ayusov. Ainda prima mea e numele meu este Yasu Melene Stefanos.
They are from Somalia, Iraq, Poland, Romania, Nepal, the Philippines, and many more. And, oh yes, of course, from England. This part of London has families from all over the world. They come to live and work in London.
Dania, click on one of those.
Many children don't speak English when they start. It can be a problem, but with good teachers and friends, they learn fast. Soon their English is good, and their schoolwork is good too. The children at this school get to know children from different countries. They're laughing and talking together. It's great for them to have friends from different countries. At Byron Court, the children don't only do schoolwork. They learn about different cultures. They also learn to work together. A good example for everyone.
Okay, lovely. Let's go back to our presentation. So, teachers then whose name begins with A or C, only those teachers, please could you write down the words that you heard in the school words that you heard, like with the words that were related to school in that video. Yeah, playground. Okay, fine. Learn primary school classmates. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. Fine. So there we've got plenty of examples there. The second task then, a bit more challenging. I'm going to ask people with first names of D, E, and F to write in the chat box a sentence for me, not just a word, but a sentence saying the person they chose, a student or a teacher, the emotion they had on their face, and why you think they felt like that. You don't know. It's a hypothesis. Okay, so the type of person, how they feel, and why they feel like that from the video. Let's see if we can get any thoughts on that. The teacher looks encouraging because she smiles. A student is happy because he was playing in the playground. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Marianne, for those ideas. The English teacher felt proud since he can make them speak. Yeah, nice. Okay. Okay. Yeah, some nice thoughts there. Yeah, teacher looked serious. She was concentrating on the student. Yeah, curious walking past the camera. Okay, some interesting thoughts. Then those of you with first name G to I said, I asked you to write down school words that you saw. So there's some things you see that aren't mentioned, of course. What did you see in that video related to a school? Have any of you, what did you see? Yeah, interactive whiteboard, exactly. Things like this that are not, playgrounds. Not all of them are, maybe mentioned. Okay, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through. Apologies for all of you with a surname with a name that starts with a J and onwards. I'm just because there's other things I want to do in the session. A couple of things to say. I didn't explain what each of the questions meant, just for time as well. Of course, in class, with students clarify a bit more. If you look through the tasks, you'll see that some of them are easier than others. Some of them are quite cognitively simple. Some of them require a bit more creativity. Some of them linguistically are harder. Some of them are easier. So this idea of assigning different tasks then speaks to mixed ability, because we might assign a task based on our students' ability, what they need to work on, what we think they can cope with. This speaks to collaborative learning, this idea that students doing lots of different tasks, but a defined task for everybody, and then we teach the rest of the class what we've learned. Of course, in a lesson, I would be nominating you to speak and tell me the answers. Okay. Good. Okay, good. Let's move on. Okay, and as we've seen, we can share a video in a lesson and share its sound as well. Okay. So as I've said, tools like Zoom let you share computer sound. Tools like Google Hangouts and Skype, it's a bit more challenging because you have to configure your computer, although it can be done. If you can't share your audio through your tool, there are other options. Okay, so it may be your students have a CD with their course book with listening tracks and videos on that they can watch. Perhaps your material has an online portal. So Pearson has the Pearson English portal where any student using a Pearson course can log in and have access to all the resources around their course, so be able to watch them that way. Maybe your course has its audio tracks and videos hosted on the internet. Other ideas, you can do what's called a live listening. So imagine I can't share my computer sound and the students can't access a listening track. I can, for example, I can read off the transcript and just read it out and we do the listening that way, or I can just come up with my own listening. Or bring in somebody else to the lesson, so like a mystery guest. So my last secondary school I worked at in Spain, my parents would come and visit me, and my dad said, "I'd like to go into your school." And I thought, well, that's a good idea. So I brought him in, and he spoke to the classes, and they were all very interested to hear from somebody different, not just me all the time. He spoke to them, they asked him questions. I asked them questions about what he'd said. So if I were full-time teaching at the moment, I'd be bringing in my parents who are retired. They've got a little bit of time on their hands. So bring them into these online lessons as kind of a guest. Yeah, that's exciting for students. And of course, on the subject of videos, there are videos out there on the internet, on YouTube, on the BBC. If I prepare a task around a YouTube video, I just put the YouTube video in the chat box and say, well, go and watch it for 3 minutes or 2 minutes and then come back. So that's another way. And there's other sites out there, like things like Film English, with lots of good videos and ideas on as well. Okay, good. So I want to talk then about having a place for materials, and I want to talk about learning management systems. Good. So we can create a digital space to put materials, which is could be something we want our students to read before the lesson, or a place where they submit homework after the lesson. Two options for this are Google Drive and Dropbox, both of which I've used. Okay, they're free, and the handy thing about Google Drive is that you get Google Docs as well, which we can use both in and out of our lessons. And it's free, unlike Microsoft Word, for example, which you have to pay for. Schools can also sign up to Google Classroom, which is a bigger platform which brings together all of the Google applications, Drive, Docs, and you can author assignments, get grades. Finally, your publisher might have a learning management system to set work and to keep track of grades digitally. Pearson, for example, has a tool called My English Lab, which accompanies many of its courses. Okay. Okay, good. So I'll just let you quickly read the text on this slide before I talk about it. Okay, so if our students have a Google account, then they have Google Docs, and they can share documents with us. We can share documents with them, and we can edit each other's documents. Okay, so this is an example of a sample piece of writing that I've corrected, clicking on suggesting at the top, as you can see. So my student can see the changes I've made rather than me just making them. And with each change, I can also add an explanation if I like. Or I could have just underlined the mistakes and got my student to correct them using suggesting. Okay. Good. Moving on, I'll just let you look at my my next slide. Yes, there's a question here. Are you talking about G Suite for Education or standard G Suite? Well, I'm talking about both, Vivian. So, the standard G Suite, Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets, but then the G Sheet for Education has these tools and a bit more. Yeah, I would say. Anyway, about the presentation then. So apart from error correcting, I've left some more general feedback here. So I've given the students some positive feedback, as you can see, and they've got a little simple activity to do at the bottom where they have to sort of fill in the missing letters in the words. They've made in the verbs. Sorry, they've made some mistakes in the past tense verbs. You know, and of course, the students can do this directly in the Google Doc. So we're all collaborating in the same document. Good thing about this as well is that the past versions are saved. So you can, if sometimes with a static kind of document, you make change, you save it, and you lost what it looked like before. This has a history of different. So if you delete something, it's still there. It's in the history. Okay. Okay. So other things to say about Google Docs then. The students can collaborate in a Google Doc outside of class as well. They can prepare a piece of writing together if they have a link to the same document. And we can also use docs in our class. I'm just going to share my screen again for a second, if I may. And let's have a look. Okay. Okay. Share my screen, and then actually going to go to a Google document. Okay. So yeah, so look, what I've got here is just the text from the course book that we looked at before. And here I've just hidden some of the words, and the students, I'm going to nominate students to read a bit, to read and try and guess what the word is, and then I can reveal it. I've just kind of blanked out words using the fill option. And of course, if if my students have access to this doc, I can nominate a student to be revealing the answers too, like like so. Okay, and now I'm just going to cover them up again with the fill. Okay, good. Yeah, and so in a Google Doc, then you can have text. If you're not, for example, if you're not using a course book, different text activities. You can put pictures in there. It's just and people can be editing it at the same time. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen again and go back to the presentation. Okay, lovely. Okay, good. Okay, so let's talk about using the current situation in class. Okay, so I've alluded to it a couple of times. It's obviously a pandemic going on, and many of us are spending most of our time inside. Okay, probably everyone on the call is well aware of this. Good. So we often get topics from kind of current affairs for our classes because current affairs are relevant to our lives, and this topic's no different. So this is a Padlet that I've created, and the Padlet then is kind of a shared space that I give you a link to, and you can post. You can type in. You can post a picture, a link, a video, and I've made a Padlet here which is entitled "How Can We Keep Our Spirits Up?" Okay, and I've shared some ideas from around the world on this Padlet. So in Spain, we've had people who are locked up in their houses playing bingo on their balconies, had a fitness instructor leading a fitness session and people doing it on their balconies. In Italy, you've had people singing songs from their balconies and making a little rainbow to say everything will be okay. My little boy's made a rainbow as well, and you kind of put it in your window, put it in front of your house. We got people, there's a guy who made a bike home trainer from kitchen utensils, and somebody who made a treadmill, which was pouring washing up liquid on the floor, taking off your shoes, and just running on the washing up liquid. Anyway, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to access this Padlet. Okay, so tinyurl.com, I'm typing it into the chat box, /corona ideas. And what I want you to do is to go to this Padlet and type in an idea. So there's a little pink button with a plus on it. Click that. An idea to keep our spirits up. What can we do to keep our spirits up in this situation? Okay. So please go to that address and start and add an idea. I'm going to share my screen so I can see what's going on. Okay. Let's have a look. Okay. Good. Lovely. I can see people are in there. Many hundreds of people editing a Padlet at the same time. I've never seen it go so quick. Let's have a look and see if I can get some ideas. Learn to play a musical instrument. Yeah, that's a good way of keeping our spirits up. Hopefully the neighbors enjoy that as well. What else have we got? Rediscover lost hobbies. Yeah, definitely. There's always a silver lining. We could take this opportunity to relax a bit. Yeah, good call. Yeah, reading a good book. There is time for reading. Yeah. Do a gym lesson. Yeah, we've got somebody saying take online classes. Yeah. Yeah, okay, good. So loads of ideas. Loads of ideas coming up. Okay. Okay, great. I mean, of course, you can look at this later on as well. I'm going to move back. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to move back to the presentation. Okay, some nice ideas there. Good. Okay, so back in the presentation then. So perhaps have our students share one idea on the Padlet that they've found on the internet and one of their own ideas. And the idea then is that there's a follow-up task. So that one thing is sharing the ideas in the Padlet, but then then after that you're going to get them to do something like a piece of writing, maybe in a Google Doc. Write about which your favorite idea, which was the most effective or the least, and why do you think so? Look at your classmate's suggestion and write down some words that you've learned that you didn't know before. Look them up in an online dictionary if you don't know them. Use them in a sentence. Perhaps it can lead to an extended piece of writing, some kind of article about how to keep our spirits up in this crisis, or how to stay sane. Yeah, or maybe a little video with advice for your. So my little boy, he's 5. All of his friends in the class, they're recording little videos. Their parents are helping them, saying hello to their friends, and they're all put together in a WhatsApp group, so they can see their friends. That's an option here. Padlet has a kind of a limit on the size of videos that can be uploaded. You can't upload a big video on there. So another option is to use the Flipgrid tool I talked about for uploading videos as well. Yeah. Okay. So what activities around that Padlet? Other activities using this this kind of crisis. How many ways can you finish a sentence? So probably between them, many ways. What did they used to do, and what do they have to do now? So it's kind of saying all the ways that their lives have changed, but also trying to put a positive spin on this, of course. What's this experience taught us? What have we come to realize? Anything? Are we going to make any changes when everything does go back to normal? Sometimes you appreciate things most when they're kind of when they've been taken away from you, right? So what can we learn from this? Yeah. Okay, good. So I just want to finish by talking about the planning in the flipped classroom a little bit. Okay, so the basic idea then of a flipped classroom is that content is presented before class, and then students spend time in class putting into practice what they've learned. Okay, so the kind of the instruction, the theory, if you like, is explained before the class, and this is often introduced in the form of a video. Okay, so in languages could be a video explaining a grammar point, for example, and some courses include this. I've got an example on the screen, Focus, which is a Pearson course. Okay, there are also websites out there like the BBC Learning English website, which I've put a screenshot of here. And they have different types of videos for different levels explaining different grammar points. Okay. And of course, you can also make your own. You can make a video of yourself with a mobile phone. But if you want to make a video of yourself with like accompanying slides to support what you're saying or to exemplify what you're saying, Screencast-O-Matic is a free one that I've used quite a lot in my job to make training videos, to make short training videos. I'm going to give you an example. So imagine you were going to make a video for your students about the present perfect continuous. You might say something like, I've been learning Spanish for 10 years. You've been learning English with me for 2 years. Thelia has been learning to ride a horse for 3 years. We've been sitting in our houses for a week now. Or Miguel, you look a bit dirty. Have you been painting again? The present perfect continuous is used for actions that started in the past and are continuing in the present, or have recently finished in the case of Miguel and his painting, etc. Okay, so I did actually teach students called Thelia and Miguel, and Thelia liked horse riding, Miguel liked painting. So I've used what I know about my students in my little explanation of the grammar point. Yeah, so that's going to be, they can find it interesting to listen to if they themselves are reflected in it. Okay. So that'd be an example of the flipped classroom. And I just want to finish off by talking about things we might get them to do before and after class. So in an online lesson, you're probably unlikely to get them to be reading a long article or doing a big piece of writing. Those are things that can be done outside of class, or a bit before, certainly before in the case of reading, probably after in the case of writing. Of course, smaller ones are okay, but remember, these classes need to be, I think, sort of agile, have a bit of pace to them. Video, something can be done inside and outside of class, and also think, in your normal teaching, what do you have your students to do outside class? Do you get them practicing vocabulary? Maybe your course has got an app. I've shown you an example here from a Pearson course roadmap. Perhaps you've got vocabulary lists on, Quizlet. That's another. That's got games for practicing vocabulary. So all these things, these digital tools, more and more important, than ever at the moment. Okay, because we're doing it, almost all of it, digitally. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to thank you all very much for coming along and giving me an hour of your time today. And I wish you, so first of all, I wish you good health and good luck, generally speaking, in this, difficult situation we're in. And then I also wish you good luck for your online classes. I do encourage you to give them a go if you haven't done so already. I found when I started teaching live classes that it does take a little bit of getting used to. So you've got this, this digital tool, you're managing your camera and your sound, you've got your slides on, you're looking at what they're saying in the chat box, you're muting this person, you're turning this person on, you're going out of your web tool and you go into a different tool on the internet to show them something, you're going back in. You're doing quite a lot of things at the same time, and it just takes a bit of getting used to. So Rome wasn't built in a day. Practice makes perfect. Yes. Just give it a go, and I think your students will be supportive. But also enjoy this type of class as well. Having you taught these live classes for a couple of years, I see that it can be really motivating medium of teaching as well. Okay. Just to go back to the housekeeping point, this has been recorded. You are all going to get a recording. And you will also receive a certificate for your attendance also as well. Okay. Good. So distance teaching and learning then. There's a website at the bottom of the slide here, Pearson website, where you can learn lots more about this topic. Excuse me. I've given you a webinar, but there are other webinars ongoing on this topic as well by different presenters. So I do encourage you to check them out and to sign up to other webinars, blogs and videos on there, and lots of resources for you to use in your online classes as well. So do check out that website for some further ideas on the topic. Okay, good. So just a couple of minutes. I'm just going to try and look at the look at the chat box and see if I can see people are saying thank you. Well, thank you also for coming. Okay, hello Karen at T-Cell. Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks for coming along. Yeah. Let's have a look. Yeah, I'm trying to keep. Yeah, do you prefer your students to be envisioned? Yeah, so yeah, I do. I prefer having the camera on so that I can see them. It's just more of a kind of a human connection. Um, if there was a particular reason why they couldn't, I wouldn't enforce it as as a strict rule. But I try to explain why it does make sense that we can see one another because communication is easier that way. So if they do have a camera, I would encourage them to have it on. Yeah, I mean, if I'm giving a webinar, I always try and have my camera on, assuming there's no bandwidth issues. Because I think if you can't see me, it's not quite the same. Yeah. Um, let's have a look. Yeah, yeah. I'm not. Somebody said I'm not multitasking like you, but I'm trying my best. But you learn by doing. My first live classes, I was just like, oh, I'm just going to try and put this person in a breakout room. Oh, just sorry, bear with me a second. I need to, and but by through doing it, you just get better, and you can manage, 4 or 5 things at once, and just like everything, you've got to practice. Some people will do it perfectly the first time, but many of us, and many of us mortals, we need to practice to get good at it. Yeah, yeah. If I'm not the host, can I see whether the lesson is being recorded? I suppose that would depend on the tool. Um, I think on most tools you can normally see if the lesson's being recorded, but I can't speak for every tool. Yeah. Um, yeah. Okay. So Ali's saying, don't let them participate without the video. Sometimes the quality can be terrible. Yeah. I mean, it's true. You do have to take that into account. So the internet at the moment, there's issues of saturation. Read yesterday that Netflix is reducing the quality of their streaming by 30%. No more HD. So yeah, there's traffic issues at the moment. I think they're bigger. Like in a big webinar at the moment, 600 people, that might be more serious. Companies are reinforcing their servers, so I think it's improving. But fair points. Yeah. Okay. Can we use the tool you're using right now for free? No, I don't think so. This tool is Click Meeting, but it's more for webinars. Like, you can communicate through the chat box, but I can't see and hear you, so I don't think it's the best one. And there are more simple ones out there as well. Some of the ones I suggested have better functionality for a class than more than a webinar, and they're free. So this is a great tool for webinars, but not necessarily for an online lesson, I don't think. Yeah. So somebody said, okay, how do I get the first part of your great webinar? Thank you very much, Yolanta. You'll be sent the recording. Yeah, you'll be sent the recording. So that's how you can watch it again. Yeah, nominate other platforms, Ibrahim. So yeah, I put 5 on the screen, didn't I? What was it? Google Hangouts, Skype, Zoom, which I've used a lot, Web Rooms, and 8x8. I mean, there are other ones out there, but you just have to research. I haven't tried sort of exhaustively all of the platforms out there. Yeah, so I'd give one of those a go, or try and. Will I be able to share it with my academy? Is that Laura? I assume you were talking about the recording. Yeah, it's there's no, it's not private, so you can share at will. Yeah, so the recording, if you think other people will be interested in watching it, then yeah, that's great. If you want to share it, it's fine. Yeah, people. Okay, yeah. Vivian saying, yeah, Skype screen share's not great. Yeah, I've heard that a bit. I've not used Skype for a little while. People saying that the quality's not as good. Yeah. Okay, so that's something it has perhaps as a disadvantage at the moment. Okay, people explain the Click Meeting conditions. Yeah. Yeah, Ibrahim. It's true. It's true that it's Ibrahim that I spent more time talking about Zoom. It's the one that I'm most familiar with. But a lot of what I said about Zoom applies to other tools as well. Okay. Yeah. So I'm repeating this session. I can't read the Cyrillic alphabet, so I'm afraid I can't pronounce your name. But this session is repeated 4 times just to allow teachers to attend the session that's most useful to them. Okay, good. How much time is okay for online classes? I think as well, it depends what you're doing in the class as well. If you find a way to engage your students through an hour and a half in face to face, and I'm sure you can do that online as well. It depends on the age of the students. The classes I teach an hour. I think it's a good length for a lesson. I'm teaching teens for an hour online, and I don't find that they're kind of waning. It depends on the activities as well. If you're giving them dynamic activities, variation, then it's obviously easier to keep their attention than it is if they were doing something more, that they didn't find as interesting. So Zoom, when somebody's saying, can you explain where to share your computer and audio? When you click screen share, there's a little button, at the bottom, you click screen share and it tells you asks you what you want to share. And there's a little box to tick that says share computer audio. You tick it if you want to share a video from your computer. You are going to get a certificate, definitely, Camila. Okay, good. Better call it a day. It's 1 minute past 1, so I've gone over time. Many thanks for coming to the webinar. Best of luck with your online classes, and I hope to see you in another webinar in the future. Okay, so thank you very much for connecting today. It's been a pleasure, and best of luck. Okay, bye for now.